Record.
Did you get the notification?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What's going on, guys? Blacklisted Voice, episode 36. Kyle here with Logan. We're just going to sit down and we're going to kind of discuss bodybuilding, specifically for the sport of CrossFit. So not necessarily bodybuilding for physique or for the sport of bodybuilding or comp sports. Just specifically for the sport of CrossFit and what we're kind of seeing with some of our athletes, with kind of some protocols that we're doing with it, what it might help out certain athletes with, what it might deter certain athletes from. But yeah, we're just going to kind of sit down and have a conversation. Logan's actually prepping for West Coast here.
Yep.
Yeah, this will be released in a week. So
Yep.
Are you getting excited?
Oh yeah, man. It's been a long time coming for sure.
The last one you competed in on like this stage was Fittest, kind of.
Yeah, and then Wodapalooza. Right? Wodapalooza was like the last like CrossFit sanctioned event. So yeah. But I mean, honestly, I think that's, unless you did Brazil, that was like the last one. Like I know Rich said their last time competing was Wodapalooza.
That's wild.
Yeah. So like if you were lucky enough to get Wodapalooza or the Brazil competition, that was it. So it's a long year. And it's funny that we ended up getting the West Coast Classic because that I was supposed to do this one and it got canceled.
Previously.
When it was a sanctional. So it's funny that we ended up getting it, and that it's funny that we ended up getting it and that sanctional ended up being a semi,
right.
Like
right.
Kind of weird, like
maybe crazy world.
Yeah. So been prepping for this competition for a while now.
Yeah. We actually have two teams going. You have Man-Made going there, and then our team. So
yeah, it'll be and then we actually I have one more athlete that's on on a team that actually it's the gym that the girl that won the Granite Games goes to. And it was
just won the Granite Games?
Yeah, the aerial girl. Oh. She goes to this gym that my athlete's a part of a team on. And it was funny because like she was almost going to go on their team.
Oh wow.
Yeah, from what he told me. They're like, we're waiting to see if she's going to go team with us. I really hope she does, blah blah blah. And they're like, she decided to go individual, and then she freaking went to the game. So like pretty crazy.
Can she compete on the team this weekend though? Or did you
I don't think you can. I remember looking that up specifically.
Yeah.
I
think you had to decide before. Like if you're going team, you had to like decline your individual.
Right. The only thing that you could do is if you competed individually and then your team like made the games, you could go join them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So it's kind of back to like old standards.
Right.
Like 2015, 16.
Yeah. Which I don't really agree with. I don't think that you should be able to do that, but
no. They should have a team roster set, and like that's your team for the year, and you compete with every other team roster.
Yep.
Because like I thought I was fit enough to help carry a team through to quarterfinals. Turns out I'm not. But if we had if all the scores had been removed of the individuals that were going individual, we would have been fine. So I was kind of anticipating that happening, but
especially on the max lifts. Like the max lift was one of the most like you had to have a good score on it because people were pulling so many scores from their gym, and it was one of those that didn't really have a high correlation with how you did overall. So like there's going to be a lot of people that hit good numbers that maybe weren't actually that good at CrossFit, but they're just strong.
Right.
But it happens.
Yep, it is what it is. That's the sport changes literally every year now, so you just kind of have to adjust with the changes.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's definitely true.
Well, cool. So I guess we could start this off just kind of like how you might define bodybuilding, because that's like a term that seems to get thrown around here a lot. Is like I've heard other coaches like use that term. I've heard athletes use that term. Like, how would you personally define?
So for me, bodybuilding, I look at as anything where growing the muscle tissue is the main goal. So in other words, hypertrophy, because you kind of have like three, like you can have sub goals within each like energy system, but like three main goals of like building, muscular strength, whether that's muscular endurance, hypertrophy, strength, four, and then power. And then you could say speed, but like I said, like you could have power, and then you could divide it into speed and strength, but anyway, so like, and that would be like a spectrum, you'd start at, muscular endurance, and then all the way at the other end of the spectrum would be speed. But so I would define bodybuilding as anything that kind of falls into that like hypertrophy training. Because like some people might, which I don't think necessarily is wrong, but some people might have bodybuilding thrown into, I would say, movements like bicep curls, tricep extensions, cable push downs, or something like that, which is fine. Those are for sure bodybuilding movements. But it's more those are more just like kind of isolating musculatory movements that kind of fall into bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, like you could say that like bodybuilding is I don't know. I always never want to say bodybuilding is a sport, because I don't think it is. It's but
it's like a discipline more than a sport.
Right.
Because like all you have to do is just show up and literally just follow your program, and you're gonna have success on it. Like the body.
Right. Because I think you can kind of fall into the same lull as CrossFit does. When people define CrossFit, like you can say, oh, that's bodybuilding when you're talking about curls and certain other things like that. And then you could also say, oh, that's CrossFit. Well, what you're actually doing in CrossFit is like Olympic lifting or conditioning or rowing, so I think for me, the best way that how I use it in my program designs is anything with the goal of building muscular size. Where like strength might be like a, I guess, goal after that, but like in that moment, why you're putting it in your programming is you're trying to build a muscle tissue size. Or you could also be using bodybuilding implements to increase like time under tension, or really isolating like a certain muscle group. Like you could also look at it that way. But I think
kind of what I was like define it as a little bit more is like, or like kind of like a subcategory of like building size, but also an isolation of a specific muscle group. Because like the way that I'm starting to look at strength is more of like, okay, what's the weak spot in the chain? And like if you're hitting like a shoulder to overhead or push jerk or something like that, maybe your triceps aren't able to like aggressively lock out that weight or press on the bar as you're like doing or something like that. Or just the delt is like super weak, so like doing some lateral raises will help the delt to contract as you're driving that bar up overhead. So I like putting on size, but like also like a subcategory of isolating the like musculature groups, if that makes sense.
Right. Like I think it's a big, it finds, you can really use it in like, I guess, strengthening the chain and finding limitation training. So like if your biceps always blow up on ring muscle ups, I think bodybuilding exercises or protocols would be a really good idea. Or like you said, triceps, or maybe your like triceps like blow up a lot on like the ski erg or something. Well, I mean, tricep extensions would probably be a pretty good movement for you, or tricep banded push downs. Just because it is something that like sometimes there's just not like in a CrossFit workout or Metcon, you're just going to be things that don't get hit as much as like you need them to.
Right.
For example, like if you never really worked on like strict pressing, and you like just do metcons, Olympic liftings, let's just say main lifts, you're never really going to develop that like first 3 inches off the chest strength that like sometimes you do need, because it's almost never used.
And just like shoulder stability in general.
Yes. Right. Yeah, because you're never under like that time under tension. Right. And that's what like we've talked about a lot, is it's like I would say if I were to circle one issue that's the most common, it would probably be like lack of shoulder stability. Just like that overhead, having a solid lockout and be able to hold it for a good amount of time is a huge limitation for a lot of people.
Normally, like what I've been seeing lately is people that are coming off of group programmings have that limitation. Is like there's like 2 things that are like big limitations for them, is like 1, abdominal wall strength, and then 2, there's raw shoulder strength. So like kind of getting a little bit more into that quote unquote bodybuilding type style movements with like single arm Arnold's press, single arm neutral grip dumbbell press, tricep extensions, bicep curls. So like raw overhead pressing strength, and then stability overhead as well.
Right.
So like those 2 things are kind of some things that I've been seeing is like people that are coming off of blogs. It's like almost the first thing that we kind of target and attack is like, okay, you're collapsing in your squat. Like we need to turn your obliques on and we need to get your abdominal wall strong. It's like, we'll that. And then it's like, okay, like your like handstand push-up capacity for like strict handstand push-ups isn't super great. Like let's put you through a raw pressing cycle, and then all of a sudden boom, their pressing capacity just goes through the roof on like something like a strict handstand push-up.
Right. So I think that that like the capacity, and then just like density. Like I think a lot of people come in from group programming or whatever they've done before, and they just have like density problems. Like they just can't handle, like you said, like a ton in a row. Right. Which, I mean, it is something that you have to spend a lot of time on doing. But just with like the way the sport is, like I would say most of the time it happens is like on qualifiers, where they might have like stick a bunch of them in the middle, like a bunch of muscle ups or strict handstand push-ups in the middle of a workout or something like that. Unless it's like a huge chipper, most of the time it doesn't happen a ton in big competitions. And then like most of the time in like in-person competitions, you have like transitions. So like even if you do get X amount of handstand push-ups in a row or whatever, you might have to like move something in between, or like, whatever. So yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of people have to spend a lot of time in doing some like just time under tension stuff with bodybuilding, whatever their limitation is, can, garner huge progress. Like I remember when I think I would say another really common kind of weak link is people's grip, and just like grip training. And I remember like my grip used to always blow up, and a lot of times, sometimes I remember my biceps would even blow up from like gymnastics. And we did, a bunch of like isolating activities and exercises, and that helped a lot. And then honestly, just like I think rowing so much helped a ton. For like sure. It just gives you so like you're just pull endurance is just it develops over years and years of rowing, and it's like
you think about it, it's like probably on average people row 28 to 30 strokes per minute. For guys relatively. Right. So let's say you have 5K worth of rowing. That's like, can't fucking do math right now, but we'll average it out to like 20 minutes. That's like 6,000 strokes. Is that right?
I think it'd be 600. You do 20. You said let's just say 30 strokes per minute, and it's
600.
20 minutes. Yeah, 600. Yeah,
600.
Yeah, and that's a ton.
-0. Yeah, I mean that's some like major repetitions right there. But yeah, I think like too, like you can kind of categorize bodybuilding into like 3 kind of like almost subsections, and you can use the isolation from it to create different adaptations. So like you can do a muscle endurance, you can do kind of like a strength aspect to it, and then you can do a hypertrophy aspect to it. So like you can, if you kind of break bodybuilding down into those 3 things and then classify it a little bit more as like isolation movements, and we can use the isolation movements from quote unquote bodybuilding to create whatever specific adaptation, muscle endurance, strength, or hypertrophy that we're looking for out of those movements. It can transfer over into the sport really well. I think a lot of it just comes down to, you know, what type of athlete benefits from bodybuilding protocols, and what type of athlete like you don't want to give those protocols to, you know? Like you were talking about the density protocols before. So like, or like the density of the sport, like the one that comes to mind is like that 55s workout, like the 55 reps, 55 wall ball, 55 row, and then you're doing 55 handstand push-ups. Like a crazy standard. Like if somebody's not super like the density of those handstand push-ups at the time that workout came out specifically, people would like greatly benefit from pec endurance, tricep endurance, and upper back endurance, and delt endurance. And so like had an individual been doing a lot of like endurance style training with some bodybuilding protocols like banded pull downs, like you were talking, 50 reps into maybe some dumbbell kickbacks or something like that, into some like maybe banded pec flies, that workout is going to be significantly easier for them. Like, or those reps are going to be significantly easier for them come that workout. Vice versa, maybe somebody's just like not freaking strong enough to do those reps. So now, or they just don't have the like endurance to put power out in those reps. So they need a little bit more muscle fibers to allow them to continue keeping a power output on those reps. So a hypertrophy protocol for them with like maybe neutral grit dumbbell strict pressing, like we were talking about, for, you know, 12 to 15 to 20 reps, is going to benefit them greatly inside of like that density protocol. Same thing, like maybe they're looking for a little bit more strength component. You can drop that down to like that 5 to 7 rep range, and now all of a sudden you're training like a little bit more of a strength aspect to it, if that makes sense.
Because I think like a lot of times like if you have a limitation within a movement and you just keep on doing that movement, like there is like, yes, practicing something over and over again, like to a certain extent will get you better. But there's also like, if it's a compound movement, but you have if you have a weak link, that's a smaller muscle. You're just not like, if I'm going to do handstand push-ups is mainly a shoulder exercise. It's not mainly a tricep exercise. So like if I keep doing handstand push-ups, my shoulders are mainly getting worked, not my triceps, which actually need to be the thing that gets worked. So like, that's kind of where, you know, the bodybuilding isolation can come in. Or even like a lot of times I'll break the movement down. So like if someone struggles like with handstand push-ups, I might have them do like a lot of pin presses, to where like they're like pressing the bar like on a rack from like their forehead, just so they get so many reps at that like lockout position. They're just able to accumulate so many more reps than they would if they were doing the whole movement, and they're working like their weakest link over and over and over again. Or you could do it from the bottom up. Like if someone has trouble, you know, with, you know, a strict press or something like that, you can get a lot of reps of just pressing the bar up to their forehead, you know, kind of working like those sticking points. And I think working those sticking points within movements bodybuilding exercises do for sure come into play and are super useful.
Yeah. I actually use like Z presses with people who like have trouble activating their abdominal wall upside down.
Yeah, Z presses are great.
Yeah, you like take away half of your lower body, so you don't have to focus on that at all, and then you can focus on using your abs while pressing. And then now you just get the person to kick upside down, maybe put them in a pike position on a handstand or on a box before that, and get them to like feel it seated where they're more kind of kinesthetically aware of their body. And then we put them on a box, put them upside down, tell them to kind of try and feel the same thing that you were feeling in the Z presses. And then we put them on the wall, and now all of a sudden they have their abs turned on to press out of these handstand push-ups. So like that's another kind of like component or aspect of bodybuilding that like transfers over, is like we can break movements down and then isolate those movements into like whatever is needed for like gymnastics movement or press or whatever it is, and kind of isolate it like with the bodybuilding, and then build it back up into the full movement based off of whatever your weakest chain is.
Just like that's what I would say it's good for. It's just like full, like you always hear you're only the strongest is your weakest link, and I think that's really what kind of isolatory exercises can do, is just strengthening the chain. And then also just like with with more compound movements too, someone can have within a squat, they could have weak quads, they could have weak glutes, they could have their hamstrings inactive, and you can do lots of bodybuilding exercises to activate them, and B, get them stronger without just pounding them with more squats. Like that's one thing that it's just so as far as just like longevity, like that's just something that's always going to catch up with you if you just keep on doing compound movements just for the sake of getting better at them. Because it's a
squat on their toes to use their quads more.
Exactly. Like it's going to be a lot easier on your body if you take some time off to do like an 8-week cycle of like a single leg squat rather than doing a Smolov squat progression or something. It's a
8-week progression of like cyclist squats or something like that, where like their quads are the weak link of the lower body. Like load them up with a cyclist squat, which is going to decrease the weight, like total weight that you're using, which is going to be a little bit heavier for the joint as well. And then freaking like you have a unilateral movement in there, which is going to transfer over to the actual lift when you get back into bilateral squatting. So like, it's like, there's like multiple different benefits for it, but like the isolation component of it is pretty substantial for creating some change inside of whatever lift you're looking to strengthen, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. And I would even say like, that's one thing that I've, come to realize is like with certain, not everyone's just so different. And I think you'll have a lot of similarities on body types. So like, that's one thing that I've been trying to really do a good job of. It's like keeping notes on like, okay, I had this person with, long levers, they feel this and this and this, and then they responded well when I gave them this, like I remember it was one time where I have someone that has a really good deadlift, and you would think that someone with a really good deadlift would have strong hamstrings. But he actually doesn't have strong hamstrings because he's just more built for deadlifting, and it's almost, he uses a lot of lower back for it. So when you put him into a position where he has to use his hamstrings, or when he's doing a workout that's forced to use your hamstrings, like, I remember you always said like his hamstrings like blew up on rowing. And I was like, that's never happened to me. It's because I actually have stronger hamstrings. I might not have a better deadlift, but I just have shorter limbs. So my hamstrings are stronger because I'm literally over the bar longer when I do deadlifts. So yeah, it's just like interesting things like that, that can kind of help in using some of those movements to make those more compound, complex movements better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would look to give him more like isolation of the hamstrings, and then you would essentially
Yes.
start to see his deadlift like start to skyrocket.
Yes. And honestly, what I've actually been doing too is so like shorter limbed people, like people that have like a a good deadlift and maybe not good at cleans, like no one's going to be the same case, but a lot of times they're built for hinging a little bit more. So I've been having a lot of those kind of athletes use a trap bar deadlift, and it's just a lot more, it's a little bit more quad dominant. It's a little bit more carryover to actual Olympic lifts.
Yeah. That vertical.
But yes, the vertical torso. And especially just with like rowing too, just keeping that vertical torso. And I've seen lots of good results. And just a little bit more powerful off the floor. Because most people that hinge well, they hinge on a clean, and you really, you don't want to do that. You want to keep
like
that.
The bar position is just going to be trash once you get it, like after you make contact.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's been something that that I've been using here lately, and I think it's been interesting just to see how like people just respond to different like hinging just tools, and just kind of, because like you can hinge a little bit on a trap bar deadlift, but just not as much. And honestly, like it's a lot better on your back, just because the load isn't in front.
Right.
So I've been having some good success on that, as far as just like training health. Like we were talking about the other day, how like deadlifts just wreck people's lower backs.
Literally last night, because we did the West Coast.
and they're just so hard to like actually get stronger in while doing CrossFit.
Right.
So throwing some trap bar deadlifts in there, I haven't had as much people complain about their lower back. So like it's also, so it's one of those things that like that was just kind of an example of like how you can use little tweaks of programming like bodybuilding to kind of match up with different body types.
Right.
And certain limitations.
Yeah. So I guess you've been kind of looking at it from like a anthropometric standpoint, or like how a body is shaped and formed, and levers and limbs.
I've been trying to look at it more. I've been trying to to just take in more like data on it, just so I know, like if I get an athlete and I see how they're built and kind of how they move, I can kind of know some things before. Everyone's different, but I can kind of have a better starting point, because I was like, oh, okay, I've dealt with an athlete that was built like you, had similar limitations. Let's start with this, and
it's like you can almost be like, oh, here's a short torso, long legs, like probably going to be pretty good at pulling, probably need a little bit more like squat variation. So like, well, like in their testers, you're already looking for like, okay, what's their deadlift, what's their max deadlift, what's their max squat, are those two like comparable, like which one needs to be driven up? And then what's their capacity testers on both? Like, can they move a bar really well, pulling it off the ground? Can they squat a bar really well off of a rack? Like and so now you can already like know that that's something that you're going to be looking for in the testing when you start anthropometrics as like your or when you're looking at anthropometrics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, long arms, like probably a little bit better at pulling. Shorter arms, probably a little bit better at pressing. So I've kind of been looking at it a little bit more from like a physiology standpoint. And this is more just like my observation. I wouldn't necessarily have like studies or data to necessarily like point to this, like, oh, here's a like predominantly slow twitch muscle fiber athlete, or like here's a predominantly muscle or fast twitch. Like it's more so just observations of the athletes that I'm working with, and like people that are like people that look like they have leaner muscle mass. I've been putting through like some bodybuilding protocols, especially with like isolation movements, and it's mostly like shoulder or upper body pressing that I've been doing a lot of this with. And they've been having some pretty good success in carrying into their gymnastics and into their just strength numbers in general. Like even like, so like if you do a lot of upper body pressing, like you would expect your handstand push-ups to improve. Well, their chest bars and like bar muscle ups and muscle ups are actually improving as well. I think part of that also might be because I'm doing a lot of horizontal rowing with them as part of their body protocols. But it's been transferring over super well into allowing them to produce power. And because they are more like aerobic of an athlete, they're going to be able to sustain that power a little bit longer.
Right.
So, and that was kind of another, so caveat off of that, like the horizontal rowing, like a lot of people have pretty weak lats or inactive lats in the sport. You heard like Logan talk about like his biceps blowing up whenever he was pulling a lot. Bodybuilding can be great for learning how to activate something. So a lot of the
for sure,
I'll give people a lot of like arcing dumbbell rows if they talk about their biceps getting sore or they feel their biceps a lot in some of their like chest bar muscle up or pull ups. It'll help them to turn their lats on and then make their lats strong as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's huge. And also, like, I would say if you learn like proper sequencing of like activation, it'll keep your injury rate lower as well, and overuse in general. Because like if you're always using biceps on gymnastic stuff or always using just your triceps, like your elbows are gonna hate you after a while. Or if you're always eventually.
If you're 21, maybe not.
For sure. Or if like you're so quad dominant, like your knees are gonna eventually, like if you don't learn how to activate your glutes, like your knees are gonna hate you because you're using your quads literally for everything. So that's also like a lot of, like you're saying, like some of the bodybuilding stuff can really help with is just like injury prevention too, because you are slowing it down, you are using less you're using less compound movement, so it's a little bit easier. And like you're not gonna have unless you do thousands of them, you're not gonna have like an injury doing a tricep extension, so
DOMs, but that's about
that's about it.
You have to be like doing tricep extensions all day long.
For sure.
So like in your opinion, like, so we're talking about like isolating movements, like in your opinion, why doesn't doing just a CrossFit program like allow you to kind of like fix or develop some of these like things that we've been talking about, like the muscular endurance, the isolation of the tricep endurance or shoulder endurance, or like quad dominance over hamstring dominance? Like, why do you think that a CrossFit program can help develop those, or like, and if not, why?
I think that unless you are a incredibly gifted athlete, with basic CrossFit programming, you're going to hit a wall. And I truly believe that you'll get to a point where your progress will cease. You might have like some strength like gains, and maybe like a few seconds here, a few seconds there. But I think just after a while in any sport, to get better, you have to literally start concentrating on that like 1%, like that 1% is going to get you better. So like what that is like slowing things down, looking at the quality of the movement instead of like how many reps you're doing or how much weight you're doing. So I think that in a CrossFit Metcon, for the sake of time, there's so many things that you do differently so you can have a faster time. Like you're not going to activate certain things and make sure that, my glutes are turned on or my lats are turned on, or I'm pressing down on my chest to bar pull-ups instead of pulling with my biceps. Like you're never going to be able to feel that in such an intense environment. And I think that's probably where I would say you lose the ability to like isolate things within a CrossFit Metcon is the intensity. Because you're just not as consciously aware of
you're like, Jim got 458 on this workout, I have to get 457 on this workout.
Exactly. So yeah, I think your CrossFit, I think from the intensity standpoint, and then I would just say like the time under tension standpoint, like most things, like you're never really having to hold positions. Like that's like the one thing, like I used to write programming for the gym that we used to go to, and I would have them like just once a week, they would just do like gymnastic, like holds and stuff. And people would, literally hate it. And it's because in CrossFit, like they chase that intensity. Like they don't, like you're like, I feel like when you're doing holds and isometrics and stuff, you're so much more conscious because you're just like having to hold the position. You're having to concentrate so hard on holding a good position, as to where if you're like doing a Metcon, you can kind of like, sometimes you can kind of zone out,
you're kind of like, you're almost like passively moving through the position.
Right.
So it's like you might have like for a squat, for example, you might have a strong bottom position and you might have a strong, like 3/4 of the way up, but you don't necessarily need to have a strong position at 90 degrees in a squat,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And just like different things. Like I know that if I'm doing a Metcon, the only thing I'm really going to concentrate on is like my breathing, my breathing cadence, making sure my heart rate stays at a good level. Where's my pacing? So I'm not really concentrated on, I better make sure that I'm activating my lats, or, are my glutes turned on when I'm doing this wall ball? Like I'm not concentrating on that.
Yeah.
So I think outside of a traditional CrossFit program, that's where you have to practice those things. So when you get into the actual CrossFit program, then you don't have to think about those things. And it's become second nature. And sometimes like I wouldn't say it's more of like a strategic thing. But like there's certain workouts where I'm like, okay, like my biceps or my forearms might get really toasty. So I really need to make sure that I'm pulling down with my lats, or vice versa. Like if, sometimes for whatever reason, some workouts blow your lats up more than your grip. And like you might not
deadlifts and upper body.
Right. So you might use your biceps more. But I think that's more of,
that's like starting
like a sport perspective.
Yeah, that's like starting to get into like more of the 1% of the sport.
Right. But yeah, I think just the inability to slow things down and the intensity of just a traditional CrossFit program kind of gets in your way of those limitations. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with like a traditional CrossFit program. But you're
fit and healthy doing a traditional
for sure
CrossFit program. But if you're training for sport, like there's a point in time where you're gonna have to, like you said, like you're gonna hit a wall at some point in time. You have to start to examine some of that 1% type stuff that's gonna start getting you better.
Yeah. Like I know people that, they do just, class workouts, and that's fine. It's totally fine. And they've had, like the same, movements, their movements that are weak movements literally look the same for years, and years, whereas like there's been some things where I've been given like a cycle or two and then it's pretty much fixed. So that would be kind of like the example of traditional CrossFit programming, and then getting a little bit more guidance.
Right. And that was like one thing that we did with you was like your grip specifically was like through a grip cycle, and like it fixed itself,
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if you had just been doing CrossFit, it might have taken 3 years for your grip to get better, because you're
just such a longer time.
Right. Just always bumping up into that wall inside of workouts. Now you're like losing intensity on it and not training the specific characteristics that you needed for that grip. And it's kind of like, if we run it back to like the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about like blogs and stuff like that, like or group programs, like each individual is going to run into something that program is not providing them specific to what they need.
Yep.
That's kind of where a coach can come in and provide guidance and give them exactly what they're missing for that movement to improve their movement.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably a discussion for another time about like intensity, fun and training enjoyment,
right?
Like that. Like their
balance.
Blogs are like way better for all of that stuff. But there's some
for sure
like hybrid that you need to kind of find and
definitely.
So,
definitely. And I think that's like the ultimate question. And it's like it's such a it depends situation.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's no, even if I did have like well, if you want to be competitive, you need to train X amount of sessions with people, X amount of sessions without. Like even, I mean, it would have to do with like who you are as an athlete, how competitive you are, the point in time in the year, how you deal with intensity, what you need. It's like it's so
there's a lot
dependent.
We'll make another podcast on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
So what like if somebody's looking to start adding in bodybuilding like into their program, like where do you tend to like put in some of that work?
I typically put it at the end. I typically put it at the end, or I mix it in with like their weakness. So a lot of times I might do like if they have like a tricep limitation, I might just like it in terms of just overloading it, I might have them do like 20 tricep extensions into 20 strict handstand push-ups or something like that. Or like, for example, there was, I know you gave me one, it's not bodybuilding, but this is kind of an example of how it's used. It's like I had a core limitation with burpees. So I had done some like GHD sit-ups into burpees, or I had a core limitation with like not chest to bar, with toe to bar. And so we did like some core stuff into the movement. So that's kind of how I'll do it. I'll either do it like with like the bodybuilding movement before the kind of weakness compound movement, or I'll just do it by itself at the end. Or if it's someone that's like really new to the sport, maybe not new to the sport, but like, let's say they have, they only have kipping pull-ups. They don't really have chest to bars. They don't really have strict handstand push-ups. I would put the bodybuilding stuff probably towards the front end of the workout, of the training day. Because I feel like it would be like, that's the most important thing right now, is building those weak links. So you can eventually do, chest to bars or strict gymnastics or something like that. But typically towards the end, I typically do, and it just like depends on what they, like I said, like what they need. Like typically I'll order it somewhat like, what they need to work on most is first, and then kind of like go down from there to an extent. Like if they need to, if they need to get their rowing better, but then they also need to get stronger, I'm not necessarily going to have rowing before their strength,
Right.
And so that's how it would work with like bodybuilding. Or if it was really important and they had enough time, I might put the bodybuilding as a separate session.
Yeah. I kind of, so like one thing that I'm finding is like females need a lot more like upper body bodybuilding.
Yes, absolutely.
So I've actually been starting to put that in as like a full session for some females, where it's kind of more in the off season, I guess. So like you might not see as the season kind of progresses, but like I'll have full days where it's like upper body bodybuilding, like chest and back, and then like horizontal pull, horizontal press type thing. And then like bis and tris. And I might even incorporate like weighted vertical pulling and weighted horizontal pressing, or weighted horizontal weighted vertical pressing. So like super sets of kind of like all those things. And it might even have like one day it might be like a muscular endurance component to it. the next day it might be like a hypertrophy component to it.
Yeah.
So like, it's like I've been doing full days and almost like 1 to 2 times a week of that bodybuilding style for females.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, like I think that needs to be left in year round for females, just because like their pecs aren't as developed as males. They have less muscle fiber. I shouldn't say developed, but they just have less muscle fiber to press in any sort of like horizontal or vertical pressing. So like making sure that they have strong delts and strong shoulders is like paramount for the whole year. So like I'll start out doing like probably in the off season like sessions with them, like full sessions, and then start converting a little bit more towards like at the end of the session I'll start throwing in bodybuilding when they're like, okay, here's your aerobic power piece, prepping for the open. Now let's maintain some of that pressing power that you've had and like put in like a 3x10 or 5x10 strict press at the end of their session or something like that.
Right.
So like a lot of it just kind of depends. There's one of my male athletes is actually doing a lot of bodybuilding right now, and I kind of like mix and match with him. So like he might have a full, and again, it's more upper body than it is lower body. Like lower body is just harder unless you're in a freaking Globo gym and you have a bunch of shit. Like, but like for him, it's like I'll kind of mix and match. Like sometimes he'll have some bodybuilding stuff at the end of his session, because there was a study out there that showed like if you got your heart rate up high, hypertrophy actually took a little bit more if you did it after getting up your heart rate. So like sometimes I'll put it after his sessions if I'm looking to like try and get him bigger. Sometimes I'll just have a full session for him. Sometimes I'll have one component of a bodybuilding piece after maybe some technical Oli lifting. So it kind of just depends like where like that athlete needs it at. And like then CrossFit's constantly varied. Like with this guy, I've been kind of like varying where he gets his touches on it. And it's working. It appears to be working pretty well. We haven't tested any maxes in a little bit here, but he has hit like a 8 RM lifetime push press PR. We just haven't, we're in like the 3/4 of the way through the cycle. We'll hopefully have some numbers by the next podcast.
For sure.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, where the time of the year is and what specifically you're looking to work on with that individual. But it's like a general rule of thumb. Like I think females need a little bit more upper body bodybuilding, and too, like if you look at the history of the athlete, like somebody who's played football their whole like for 4 years and gotten out of college and they're like, okay, time to hit CrossFit hard. Like they probably need a little bit more technical components to so you don't want to take up their training session with, you know, bicep curls and tricep extensions and because they did 12 years of that in football or whatever.
I would say most like if it's a football player, I mean it's basically positions, time under tension, and just movement quality. Like for me, example, like I'm pretty sure like when I started CrossFit after playing college football, I'm not that much like raw stronger, you know, like my raw lifts actually were probably stronger when I played football. Which, I mean, I just didn't, I mean, I was also bigger too. But yeah, that's just kind of there's not many females that come into CrossFit that you're like, all right, you're strong enough. We don't really need to prove.
Or have just like in general done what guys do in the gym for you know, for
sure.
Like guys go and take like weightlifting classes in high school. Like I took a weightlifting in high school. I think we had like 2 or 3 females in the class, and they were pretty much just there to like hang out with the guys. They barely did any weightlifting when they were in the class, you know, like enough to get the A check in the box and then bounce.
That's why like literally I would say like maybe not at the very elite level, but like the female side of CrossFit is so much more dependent on just like training age.
Yeah.
And just like time working out, or not,
Yeah.
sorry,
I mean,
time training. Like, I mean, so many females are just at a huge disadvantage because they hadn't started lifting till CrossFit.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and then the ones that have, they're like leaps and bounds over people, or the people that even like kind of messed around with gymnastics a little bit, like not even like super competitive, but like they did gymnastics maybe through high school. They're leaps and bounds ahead of people.
Right.
But
right.
guys, it's like everyone lifts.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna quickly pull up the Granite Games leaderboard to go off of that point, because it's like one thing we're seeing on the female side of things right now. Kind of using Granite Games as an example. So like first place was Ariel, is her name, I think.
Yeah.
And she's been doing CrossFit for like ever. Then we have two younger girls who have they also have a longer training age compared to a lot of individuals.
Yeah.
But to Logan's point, they've been lifting as well. Man, my phone's not working. Over the course of their training. So like they have been lifting, like Emma Carey, very strong. Mal O'Brien, really freaking strong. And then Alessandra Pacelli is in there. She's had an extremely long training career. I mean, she's been competing in the sport since like 2013 or something like that. So like, again, longer training age. And then who's the fifth? Caroline Connors. I actually don't know that much about this individual.
She is older though. She's like 29, and she's been in the sport for a while.
Yeah, 28. So been in the sport for a while. Nicole had started back in like 2013. I actually introduced her to CrossFit, so cool. And then Chrissy Aramo, been in the sport since, I think she was competing at regionals. I mean, older individuals, quote unquote older. In their 30s. Steph Chung, I think is a little bit older. How old is she actually?
I think she's like 31, 30.
29, yeah.
29.
So you're starting to see like Rachel Bondarich, 28. So pretty much inside of the top 10, you had like most girls were 28 to 30.
Yeah.
And then there was the two outlier teens who have had longer training ages.
Right.
So
that's what I was kind of thinking about that. If we're gonna start seeing that trend on the female side, because like there's been no guy that's been even close to being as good as like Mal O'Brien.
Right.
What's the other one's name?
Emma Carey,
yeah. And I think, I mean, it could evolve into it, but I think we possibly could start, like if the competitiveness of CrossFit keeps on going up and there's more and more money poured into the sport, we possibly could be looking at the same thing that happens with men and women's gymnastics, where the females are significantly younger. I don't know. It's just like, it's super interesting to see kind of evolve. Because like I was like, there's no way like these teenagers are gonna get to the big competition, and there's no way that they're gonna be able to do, well. And they both qualified, which is pretty crazy. Yeah.
And it's so like on the guys side of things, there were two guys that are like 25 that qualified. Yeah. And then Roy Gamboa, who's like outlier as fuck, is like 34. Tim Paul's 31, and then Chandler's 27. So it's definitely like for guys, it's like that mid kind of that 25 to 27 is like your sweet spot for guys.
Yes, I would definitely agree.
Like a freak. But yeah, it's kind of like again, like, you know, these guys have probably had a little bit longer training age for lifting, you know.
And also, I think you can kind of look at the Panchik twins. Like, they've been in the sport a long time, but they're consistently getting better the closer they get to that 25 to 27-year-old range, you know, especially Saxton.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like a lot of these individuals have probably had some, like Chandler was in the military, like wrestled for that. So probably had some sort of
years of
background
strength training. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's like, you know, it just goes to show like there are, like, bodybuilding got stigmatized when CrossFit first started, but like it's a very crucial part towards getting better at the sport.
And it is
healthy. Like, your joints are just going to be so much stronger if you put them time under tension on them. So
yeah, it's funny because like my buddy, when he first started CrossFit, he was doing bent over dumbbell rows and he got made fun of.
Is this canon?
No, it was my buddy Jacob. You know Jacob. Freddie. But yeah, he made fun of. Someone took a picture of him and like put it in like a group message and like, we don't do this here.
Yeah.
I give that stuff all the time to people.
Right. When I first started coaching, I would like make fun of the dudes who wanted to like dumbbell curl and bench press. Because when I went through my level 1, it was like, we don't, like, there's no functional aspect to bicep curls and bench pressing. And it's like, oh, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, a burpee is literally a bench press off of the ground. Like,
yeah, exactly. A bench press can help burpees a ton.
Yeah. A rope climb is, especially a legless rope climb with like a bent elbow, is like literally a bicep movement. So, it's just funny to see things evolve. And like, I'm getting to the point where I don't necessarily like knock anything in the fitness industry. I'm just like, how would this help the sport specifically?
Right. For sure.
Minus maybe Zumba, but I could that around.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You have any other thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, I think just to wrap it up, like just like some people that you may not want to give some bodybuilding stuff to, maybe some people that just like put on muscle really easily, and then I think you would just have to be careful on just like where you give it. So like say someone just puts on muscle really easily and they have a really good squat. Well, if you give them a lot of like lower body hypertrophy work, the chances are they might get some bigger legs or, you know, add some more lower body mass. And like, simply put, like, if you don't need to get stronger and you're getting excess muscle, that's more weight that's you're having to pull on gymnastics.
Right.
Now, this is very, very few people. Like, there's very few people that you have to be like, you can't bodybuild too much, you're going to just put on muscle too quickly. Like, that's not the everyday person. But like, if you start to notice, oh, my athlete has put on X amount of weight and they look even leaner, or they're just like sluggish in, you know, gymnastics or something like that, I think you just got to look at it. You know, I mean, I've seen some girls and guys put on, you know, a good, and I would say it's probably more on the female side. Like, just because, like we said, like the upper body pulling and pushing just is more of a common limitation. So like, they're more at the mercy of their body weight. So if they don't need to get their legs stronger and their lower body mass does, then it's like, it's not really helping them out too much. Those are few and far between, but
I would also include, though, in that, like, the height of the athlete. So like, somebody who's smaller but puts on muscle mass really easy, that actually might be advantageous for them in the sport, because no matter what, they're not going to be a, you know, 6'2", 225-pound individual. Right.
So like, and like, that's true.
So like, you know, a 5'1" female, it might be advantageous for her to do bodybuilding protocols, even if she puts on muscle mass easy, because now that barbell is going to be a little bit easier for her to cycle. but she's still at relatively the same weight as a lot of these, 5'5", 5'7".
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yep. And like just an example, like one of my athletes played like college football, big dude, and he's, taller, and by all means he's shredded at like 220, 225. Like even 230, he looks, very lean. So it's like probably need to stay away from putting on muscle mass. But like we said, those are few and far between, but it's just something to be wary of.
Yeah. The sport doesn't attract many of those individuals.
Right. Correct.
Because there is a hard gymnastics component to it. But I might freaking put those people through, isometric gymnastics contraction.
Right. Yes. And that's what I do with this athlete specifically.
For sure. So if you know that you put on muscle mass very easily and you are above 5'10", or 5'7" for females, probably don't do bodybuilding protocols. You'll get enough.
Exactly.
You'll get enough hypertrophy from CrossFit itself.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Well, cool. You got anything else to wrap it up?
No, man, that's just about it. It's a fun topic. It's just as like the sport has evolved, like there's so many things within the sport that actually do help you with CrossFit that were once tabbed as taboo, I guess.
Yeah. And I think like
besides maybe elliptical, I still wouldn't use an elliptical. I know people made fun of that a lot. There's this like CrossFit shirt that had someone on an elliptical and it just said fail at the bottom.
That's so aggressive.
I know. So aggressive.
That's sweet. Yeah. And I think we probably even just like barely touched the surface of like what you can start diving into, like with some of the
too. So for sure. So many things out there that'll, help.
Yeah. So cool. If you made it this far on the podcast, thanks for listening. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. We're putting out some more YouTube content. If you guys are listening on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or some other, you can head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe and watch some of our other content we're putting out. As well, if you guys are watching or listening, please head over to our Instagram account and give us a follow, blacklisted.hq. And always, if you guys are looking for a coach for the sport of fitness or just fitness in general, we would love to be able to help you out. So shoot us email, admin@blacklistedhq.com. And we will set you up with one of our coaches and get you guys rolling towards some of your goals. So thanks for coming on, Logan.
Yeah, man, you bet. Always fun to chat about this stuff.
For sure. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.